When we look back at the rich history of the NBA, you'll see that there was almost always a dynasty present in each decade that helped define that era. There was a dynasty in the 1950s, the 60s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and the 2010s. But I'm sure most of you caught the gap in that time frame. In the 1970s, there was not a single dynasty team. Every single year, there was a different championship winner from the year prior. But just why exactly was this the case? Why couldn't one team establish itself as the clear dominant team of that era? Today, I'll do my best to answer that as we travel roughly a half century into the past. Before we get into the 1970s, you have to understand the era that the NBA was transitioning out of from the 1960s. At the very end of that decade, Bill Russell had reached the end of his career and was then retiring in 1969 as an 11-time NBA champion. His Celtics had a stranglehold on the league during his playing days, as they won 11 championships in a span of 13 years, including a whopping 8 straight. With Russell now finally out of the league, many teams around the NBA saw this as an opportunity to break through and win that evasive NBA championship trophy. The Celtics would obviously take time to acclimate after the giant void that was left by Russell's retirement, but with a young remaining superstar in John Havlicek, it wouldn't take them terribly long to rebuild a title contender once again. For years, the Los Angeles Lakers were the biggest victims of the Celtics' reign over the league. But with a recently assembled super team led by Jerry West, Wilt Chamberlain, and Elgin Baylor, and with the greatest winner now out of the league, the Lakers saw the early 70s as their time to shine. But they were far from the only team retooling and reloading for the more attainable championship. Towards the end of the 60s, the New York Knicks acquired the star point guard Walt Frazier, who was blossoming into superstardom right as Russell was making his exit. With the emergence of Frazier, the Knicks now had a fierce superstar tandem of Willis Reed and Walt Frazier, making them perennial contenders for the East title. Then there was the Milwaukee Bucks, who in 1969 drafted simply the greatest college basketball player of all time, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who was then known as Lou Alcindor. Just one season after they drafted their franchise center of the future, they acquired the 31-year-old Oscar Robertson, who quickly transformed the Bucks from a mediocre team to an absolute powerhouse. And beyond that, another team was emerging, and that was the Baltimore Bullets. With excellent draft selections in back-to-back seasons, they acquired future Hall of Famers Earl Monroe and Wes Unseld. So basically, after the retirement of Bill Russell, the league quickly turned into a gladiatorial bloodbath, with many serious championship contenders all emerging pretty much simultaneously. This translated to a very competitive start to the decade, with various different winners. In 1970, the New York Knicks defeated the Bullets, the Bucks, and the Lakers on their way to winning the NBA championship, as Reed and Frazier acquired their first rings of their careers. The next season, the Milwaukee Bucks dominated the postseason, going 12-2 through the playoffs, defeating the Lakers and Bullets to secure the championship, which was the first championship rings for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Oscar Robertson. To this day, the 1971 Bucks are considered as one of the greatest teams in basketball history. Then it was the Lakers' turn, and in 1972, they found their dominant stride, as they won an NBA record 33 straight regular season games. They also ended that regular season with a 69-13 record, which at the time was the best the league had ever seen. In the playoffs, they defeated the last two champions, the Knicks and the Bucks, as the Lakers won their first championship since the 1950s. Now at this point, the Celtics had re-emerged as serious title contenders, thanks to their superstar tandem of John Havlicek and the recently drafted Dave Cowens, who was being groomed to be the center to carry the torch after Bill Russell. The Celtics went 68-14 throughout the 72-73 regular season. But this was the New York Knicks' year to return to the mountaintop, as they defeated the Bullets, the Celtics, and the Lakers to win the 1973 championship. Then in 1974, Havlicek and Cowens successfully returned the Celtics to the Promised Land, as they defeated the Knicks and the Bucks to secure their first championship since the departure of Bill Russell. Now, with this much talent and with this many teams being capable of being championship winners, you would think that one of them would go on to establish themselves as a dynasty. But that's when the league started to go through a significant transition once again. Wilt Chamberlain retired from the Lakers in 1973, Willis Reed retired from the Knicks in 1974, and Oscar Robertson retired from the Bucks in 1974, which would lead to them missing the playoffs the following season, regardless of the fact that Kareem was clearly the best player in the league. With all of these legendary veterans retiring, this opened up the league for younger and newer championship contenders. This led to Rick Barry and the Golden State Warriors winning the championship in 1975, regardless of the fact that they only won 48 games throughout the regular season. In 1976, the Celtics won the championship again, winning their second title in 3 years, appearing as if they were on the verge of becoming a dynasty. But the thing is, John Havlicek was now in his late 30s, and was on a steady decline as he quickly approached his retirement. Along with that, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had been traded from the Milwaukee Bucks because he felt that the Midwest culture didn't fit his needs. The Lakers team that he was traded to was actually a pretty awful rebuilding squad after the retirements of Jerry West and Wilt Chamberlain. Because of this, Kareem was essentially removed from the championship picture for the foreseeable future, naturally stopping him from being the dynasty leader of the 70s. Later on, everything suddenly got more competitive for everyone in the league, because in August of 1976, the NBA merged together with the ABA League. Essentially, the NBA retained its name while acquiring 4 ABA organizations and the ABA's players across the league. The 4 teams were the New York Nets, the Denver Nuggets, the Indiana Pacers, and the San Antonio Spurs. A perfect example of the tougher competition was the fact that teams like the defending champion Boston Celtics were now getting eliminated from the 1977 playoffs by the Philadelphia 76ers, who were led by a player who was acquired from the ABA, Julius Erving. Although the 76ers did go on to lose in the finals in 7 games to the Portland Trail Blazers. The Blazers won the 1977 championship, led by their all-time great center, Bill Walton. But for obvious reasons, this Blazers team didn't go on to become a dynasty, as their franchise-leading Walton went on to have one of the most disastrous strings of career-altering injuries that have ever been seen in sports. With Walton's injuries taking the Blazers out of the picture in 1978, the Washington Bullets finally broke through and won the NBA championship, led by their veteran stars of Wes Unseld, Elvin Hayes, and Bobby Dandridge. The Bullets then tried to repeat in 1979, but they ran into a motivated Seattle Supersonics team for the second straight time in the NBA Finals. But this time, the Sonics were victorious, as they won their only championship in franchise history. And then, in the 1979 NBA Draft, the rivalry of the future took formation, as Magic Johnson and Larry Bird began their rookie seasons in 1979 with the Lakers and Celtics, ushering in the new era and the dynasty teams of the 1980s. So now that we've reviewed the decade on a season-by-season basis, how can we summarize the reasons for a lack of a dynasty? Well, in reality, it was the perfect storm of reasons. To begin the decade, the ultimate winner had retired, sending the dynasty team of the 60s into rebuild mode. The early 70s saw the emergence of many fierce championship contenders, making the prospect of a repeat champion a near impossible outcome. In the mid-70s, veteran superstars on the usual contending teams were retiring left and right, paving the way for new title contenders within the league. The merger in 1976 immediately improved the competition within the league and shook up the power rankings of the NBA as they knew it. Injuries and trades ruined the possibility of all-time great centers becoming dynasty leaders. After the retirements, the trades, the injuries, and the merger, well-balanced and competitive teams alternated championships until the arrival of Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, thus reintroducing dynasties right as the 1980s began. Ultimately, it all makes sense, but with all of the intricate moving pieces creating the perfect storm for a decade of parity, it kind of reveals just why a dynasty-free era is so rare within the NBA. Do you think we'll ever see an entire decade of NBA parity ever again? Is that something that would be good or bad for the NBA? I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments section below. Thanks for watching as always. Make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.